Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Warning, there are spoilers for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves in this content. Okay, let's go. Alright, today we're going to talk about the bidirectional canonicity of the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie. This is a really big deal. So, basically, there was this historical moment where Doric, Holger Kilgore, Edgin Darvis, Simon Almer, Forge Fitzwilliams, Sophina, all the major villains and all the major player characters, Zenkendar, in Honors Among Thieves were fully, officially canon-statted in Dungeons & Dragons. And it was saying, hey, this film that you're watching, this isn't just a pile of junk that Hollywood threw together. This is Daly and Goldstein, these actual, very real, very on-point Hollywood directors coming in and saying, we're sitting down with the design team. This is canon, right? This movie contains Aarakocra, Dragonborn, Halflings, humans, all the species from Dungeons & Dragons that are seen are official. Like, these are canon species. These are canon cities, right? There is Neverwinter. There is Waterdeep, there is Baldur's Gate. All of these are canon in Dungeons & Dragons, and they're canon in the film. And they're telling us this, in my humble opinion, to make it incredibly clear, right, that this is a canon film. And what you're seeing on screen is canon, right? And now, once you establish that, right, those stat blocks, right, that you can use as player characters, those player characters, right, and usable as both player characters and non-player characters as canon Dungeons & Dragons characters, they establish canon for Dungeons & Dragons, and the ramifications of that are massive. So let's look at some of the bidirectional canonicity in this film and see a major load-bearing wall of Dungeons & Dragons that is now changing. And what is that? Ressurection, right? So Ressurection is an incredibly important spell in Dungeons & Dragons. One, you will hear no end of complaints about Ressurection from OSR people, because they're like, oh, we'd like to kill dirt farmer characters at first and second level, and they cannot be resurrected. That way, it's always game master good, players suck, right? Like, and it's a long-standing tradition in OSR where your players suck, and all the coolness gets lumped up on the game master side. And a lot of OSR before Kelsey Dione took the crown as the new OSR king, and is now beginning to start to reshape the OSR in its entirety, and get like the disparate. She's pulling in the diaspora, right? There has been this diaspora for a long time, where OSR creators were very disorganized, fractured, really didn't work together, and by Kelsey Dione actually putting up a $1.3 million, the largest OSR Kickstarter ever in the history of humanity, right? She's pulling that all together, right? So basically, Ressurection is despised by the OSR, right? But it's there for a reason. One, I think Dungeons & Dragons has a stronger relationship with American Christianity than it does with any other religion in the world, right? And if you look through its books, you will see there's a discussion happening, in my humble opinion, in Dungeons & Dragons, and that discussion is going across four hyper important topics in humanity, which is science, theology, politics, and philosophy. And I think when it's played correctly, Dungeons & Dragons, every campaign, every session is delving deeper into science, theology, politics, and philosophy, because this is where human flourishment occurs, right? So basically, I think Dungeons & Dragons is embracing American Christianity more than any other religion, and the reason why is at its core, Dungeons & Dragons is a human flourishment tool, and American Christianity, I should say that, right? Christianity has advanced human progress more than any other religion by far, right? Like, it's not even a Jesus the dude, man. Like, who else you gonna put up? Like, I don't know, whatever, right? Like, the reality is Christianity is far ahead of every other religion, right? And American Christianity specifically, we've hit this, this sweet spot where Christianity has really delivered incredible, very practical advantages for the society overall, right? So Ressurection is in Dungeons and Dragons specifically, and it's called Ressurection, right? Specifically to link it back to Christianity, and specifically American Christianity. And the reason why is otherwise it would say reincarnation, right? But it doesn't, because D&D is an American, and that's the other thing is, in America we are primarily Christian. We don't farbargo with other religions that much, right? Like, all right, so basically, Ressurection's a big deal. Okay, huge change for Dungeons and Dragons in Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, right? Ressurection is getting walked back, and it's being changed fundamentally, right? So Edgin Darvis's wife dies, and she is dead now, and him and his daughter, he needs a wife, and his daughter needs a mother, and so Edgin Darvis wants to I was going to say resurrect. That's not right? He wants to reawaken her, right? He wants to bring her back to life, but it is not a resurrection. It is a reawakening, okay? And this is going to be done with the tablet of reawakening, okay? And this is really important, right? Because honestly, if your player character dies in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right now, and actually I think this is the case in every single edition, right? No problem. You got 50 grand in gold pieces. You waltz over to the priest, and he resurrect. Your group gets your body. They take him to the priest, and they have 50 grand in gold. All resurrection takes is 50 grand in gold. You're good to go. You're up and running, and you're back on your feet, right? But actually, what's really fascinating is Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is like, nah, check that noise, man. We ain't doing it that way, right? It's going to be the Tablet of Reawakening. So you get a Tablet of Reawakening, and once you have quested for this item, anyone can take this item, right? And simply say the words that are necessary over the body of the person who's died, and they will be resurrected. So you don't need a priest, right? You don't need 50 grand you don't need 50 grand. In fact, this item has to be quested for, right? And so this actually makes reawakening player characters, taking them from being dead to being alive. Used to be resurrection, now it's being called reawakening, and it is tied specifically to an object, right? And so is this good or bad? This is great. Now, I'm an evangelical Christian, right? But the reality is I don't need Dungeons & Dragons to carry my evangelical Christianity for me to the rest of the world. I'll do that job. Thanks. And the reality is I want Dungeons & Dragons to be open to a lot of people. So one of the cool things here is we get to keep the coolness of resurrection, which, Jesus handled that really well. And you should become a Christian today. All you need to do is say, I know I'm a sinner. I know my sin I know my sin makes it so that I can never be in God's presence, right? And that's why when I die and I stand before the judgment throne, God will cast me out, right, into the hot place, right? So you have to say, I know I'm a sinner. I know I have no ability to save myself from the rightful wrath coming from my sin. Dear Lord Jesus, please give me the salvation you earned for me on the cross. My blood, which will be shed by God's wrath, let not my blood be spilled, but your blood, right? Because you are righteous, and you can stand in my place on the judgment throne. Because when the wrath of God comes down upon you, it is completely absolved because you're perfect. I'm not perfect. And if you believe that, if you say that prayer, and you ask for salvation, and you believe that Jesus can save you, and that you are a sinner, you will be in the not hot place forever with me, right? Now, some people would say that is the hot place for them, but they would be cruel if they said that. All right, so it's like, wait a second, y'all got Scott Garibay up in your club? Like, yes, I'll be in that club. I hope you'll be there too. All right, so the reality is Ressurection is changing, right? So you don't just get to a priest, get to a temple, and you got 50 grand in gold, which you can save up at the higher levels, and everything's cool, right? There's a tablet of reawakening, and there is going to be hotly contested competition for that, right? And now this gives dungeon masters much more leeway to say, oh, no, if you want that, that person died, right? You're not just going to hop over to a priest and get them back up and running. This ain't an OSR game, right? So you're going to have to quest for this, right? Or you're going to have to let it go, and that person, puts together a new player character, right? After the group has disbanded from a player character death, after the session has disbanded from a player character death, and there's been a few days of checking in with everybody, making sure everybody's okay, right? So this is a massive, massive send of canon from D&D Honor Among Thieves back to the Dungeons & Dragons game. And I don't think people have even remotely unpacked how much canon changes Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves has established within the Forgotten Realms. And because the Forgotten Realms is connected to Dominaria, count in every single MTG setting as well, and because Forgotten Realms is the default group, that's going to connect it to, as soon as the new official D&D setting drops, that's going to connect to every single world that's ever been connected with Legos. And because MTG connected itself to Fortnite, that's going to connect to every single world that ever connected to Fortnite. The ramifications of Ressurection changing in the Forgotten Realms is massive, right? So Ressurection is gone. The old, 50 grand, a priest in a temple, everything's good, is finished, right? And now we have this tablet of reawakening, which I actually think is a better model. But what I'm really excited about is how powerfully Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves fundamentally changes the canon of Dungeons & Dragons forever. And I cannot tell you how much courage is involved with Hasbro to make the movie canon. This is what I keep telling you. Dungeons & Dragons don't play like any other intellectual property in the world, man. Stuff happens on Dungeons & Dragons that just does not happen anywhere else. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.